In a previous live stream of mine, I began working on a C compiler written in Java. The point of this was to learn more about the process and to have fun with it while I was in between live stream projects. I was able to get a very simple concept working, but I was still missing the conditional logic to compile my simple assembly code fully into assembly. Instead of finishing the compiler, I had the great idea to switch from one pointless project to an even more pointless project of making a programming language I can use inside of Discord. I've previously been making games inside Discord, so mashing these two together only seemed like the next logical step. I'm planning to build this language with built-in integration functions such as sending a message, embeds, or reactions. Why am I doing this, you may ask? Well, it's just for me to learn, but also to help teach you guys about the basics of creating your own programming language. And why would anyone want to do this? Why would anyone want to make their own programming language nowadays? Well, one good example of a more modern language is TypeScript. TypeScript was created to bring strict typing along with more object-oriented support to JavaScript, and it just compiles down to JavaScript in the end. Knowing how languages work can definitely be a very good thing to know, so with my goal in mind, let's set off on this quest of making Discord script. The first step to making a new language is to decide upon your syntax. Now, usually a real language like Java or Python will spend a long time on this to develop a plan that makes sense, provide future scalability, and generally non-trivial to learn. Now, I am neither an expert in this field, nor am I developing a language that really deserves a lot of forethought put into this, so I spent like 45 minutes writing a decently comprehensive program that covered a lot of the bases, using various features from a slew of languages I use. My initial plans were really only to develop a language similar syntactically to Java, just because it's one that I am most familiar with, but also to make a scripting based language because they're a bit easier to work with in my shell, which will be our Discord chat. And if you see the humor and pain of the name of the language, don't worry, I did too. Luckily, my plan of making this a Java-like syntax or language sort of went out the window pretty quickly, so we're just going to drop that bit and we're going to call it Discord script. Alrighty, so now with that out of the way, let's look at my base made-up code that I'll be trying to parse and interpret. First things first, I decided this will not be an object-oriented programming language, mainly just to reduce how much you'd have to type, and honestly because an object-oriented programming language just seems like it's going to be way too much and overkill for this type of project. Secondly, as you take your initial look, I did decide to make this a strict type language, meaning that you need to initialize your variable and include the type it is. This was just a personal preference, and maybe in the future if I'm feeling nice, I'll have the ability to use inferred types, but we'll see. Next, you'll see that I use semicolons to end statements and curly braces for body blocks. The Java influence is pretty easy to see here. One place I did stray from Java though is the concept of tuples, and one that I wish Java supported natively. Now, because there are no objects, only primitives, yes, I'm making string a primitive, you're welcome C# fanboys, maps aren't a thing in the traditional sense, so I made the ability to have tuples be an array. Now, you might be a little put off by that syntax, but you still haven't heard the best part. What if I wanted to support JSON in this programming language? Well, JSON can be expressed as maps of maps and lists. So technically, if you were to say add a generic or any type, you could technically nest tuple arrays inside of tuple arrays, giving you JSON equivalent. Yeah. Now, originally I made that comment, I said it's a joke, but now it's basically a meme, so you better bet I will try my best to add support for this at some point. Okay, getting back to the only slightly less of a joke parts of this programming language, you'll see that it's really nothing too special. This code here at the bottom really is just to try and utilize as many aspects of the language as I can. Its job is to take an array of strings and return the most occurring string in that list and how often it is used as a tuple. Now that I have an example of my language, I can move on to technically the second step of this process, but step one in terms of this video series, tokenizing. But before I get into actually writing code, let's cover the basis. When it comes to programming languages, there are two types, interpreted and compiled. Compiled languages like C get their code converted or compiled down to another language, in this case assembly. Interpreted languages like Python don't get their source code converted to anything, but instead get executed as is by their executing program. You can have a language that is both compiled and interpreted though. Java has its source code compiled down to bytecode before being interpreted by the Java Virtual Machine or JVM. In my case though, I am creating an interpreted language since I have a Java executor program actually running my code and it is not converting it into another language. Next, what is tokenizing? Well, tokenizing is essentially taking an input and breaking it down into the smallest individual components, or tokens, to make my job of parsing the program easier. You'll find out more on why this makes things easier in the next video where I tackle parsing, so for now, just accept that as why. Tokenizing, however, does no checking the validity of the code and you're just breaking it up. Let's actually get into the code now, shall we? I did start off by copying some of my code I wrote for my C parser, which essentially just loads in a file into a special random access file class that allows me to traverse the file's contents using a pointer or cursor, so I can easily seek different parts of the file as I need. Beyond that though, the concept of tokenizing using this is actually pretty easy. I just create an enum that has all of my tokens listed out, including 2 placeholder enums of numbers and words that are not a keyword, so to say, or token listed above. I then just start reading in characters from our input. Using some knowledge about the rules of my program language, I can use logic to better assess which token I'll be dealing with from just the first character alone. If this first character is a number, I know that it can only be a number token, as variables, functions, and everything else cannot start with a number. Yes, you could have something like a 5 head in a string variable, but all the tokens we parse inside of our quotes will end up just being combined anyways, so it's not a big deal here. So for this case, we just read in a number and we continue reading in characters until we hit a non-number character, at which point we move on to parsing a new token. If this next first character of a new token is a character, i.e. a lowercase a through z or uppercase a through z, we know we'll be dealing with some sort of word. We can then employ the same method as above for numbers and read in until we find a character that is not a lowercase or uppercase a through z, or also a number, since words can have numbers in them, they just can't start with a number. Then we just take that word that we've read in and search through all of our tokens to see if this word matches any of our tokens that we've defined. If yes, then congrats, that is our token. If not, we just group it under the plain string token, which I mentioned before, which will be used by our parser later on for variables, methods, and other stuff. The key point here is that we can decipher between, say, ASDF and the while keyword for a while loop. Last but not least, we need to handle the various symbol tokens. Luckily for us here, these tokens are only either 1 or 2 characters long, so we can just simply peek at the next character in our input and see if these 2 characters together match any tokens. If they do, great! We can now just continue on with the process. If not, we simply just grab the first character we had and check it for that token, and continue with the process then. And there we go, we have now successfully tokenized our input program into various tokens to make our life parsing this out much easier. I know this was a lot of buildup for only a little bit of programming, but getting all of this base and background knowledge is pretty important, and hopefully the future videos will be more programming focused. At any rate, we have started the process of creating our own language. I hope you guys have enjoyed and are excited for this project. While it's not available quite yet, if you're watching in the future, this project will be available to try on my Discord when it's working, so definitely check me out there. And also you can there see the Discord games bot that I had previously developed. Hope you guys have enjoyed this video. I'll see you all next time. Peace out.